Sure, one last kick. This is gonna be it. This is the moment. Vicario kicks this. And Liverpool are there. Liverpool are Premier League champions. And there it comes. Crystal Palace, for the very first time in their history, are FA Cup winners. Oh, he's found the net. Oh, what a goal. Kvaratskhelia is through, wants to add a fourth, and does so. Ahmad, oh my goodness me. That is absolutely unbelievable. Rice again. Oh! You thought he couldn't beat the first one. He's gone and bettered it. Another whip ball in. The header is in by Virgil van Dijk. Incredible. A very good evening, welcome to Champions League Live as we continue our coverage of the Champions League knockout playoffs first legs, and tonight we watch an English side take to the field. Newcastle United looking to get to the round of 16, but they have a tricky task in Qarabag, who despite being thumped by Liverpool on match day 8 are here, and are not here just to make up the numbers, on a long trip to Azerbaijan, to Baku, for Newcastle, so not an easy place to go. That is our early kickoff in the Champions League this evening. 4 games occurred last night. Galatasaray were 5-2 winners against Juventus in that game in Turkey. PSG, despite being 2-0 down to Monaco, came back and won 3-2 in that one, the European champions. Real Madrid, through Vinicius Jr.'s wonderful goal, secured a 1-0 victory away at Benfica. And Borussia Dortmund were 2-0 victors at home against Atalanta. Now, of course, after the scenes that we saw yesterday in our feature game, of course, between Benfica and Real Madrid, we will talk more about the developments that have occurred over the last overnight and today on that whole incident involving Vinicius Jr. and Gianluca Prestiani. We'll talk about that a little later on, but to the football first. And again here in Baku in Azerbaijan, right on the precipice of Europe. And Newcastle United know that coming into this one tonight, if they can come away with victory here, they know they're in a very good spot to make it to the round of 16 and do something quite historic for the football club. And they're on a good run of form coming into this one, Newcastle. Their away form all season hasn't been anywhere near the expectation, but in the last few games they've racked up a little bit of consistency on the road, and they'll be hoping that they can continue that this evening against the Qarabag side, who have performed quite well at home this season, as you would expect, but a total different task in one of England's top clubs coming to town. Also this evening, 3 8 o'clock kickoffs. Bodo Glimt will host Inter Milan, Atletico Madrid will head to Club Brugge, and Olympiacos will face Bayer Leverkusen. They're all 8 o'clock kickoffs, and we'll have confirmation of the final scores of those once they conclude later this evening. But first, let's get to the teams for tonight's game. Start with the home side, Qarabag, and they start with Kuchelski in goal. A back four of Silva, Mustafa Zadza, Medina, and of course at left back, Jafar Guliev. In midfield, Bacalo alongside Jankovic, with Montiel in the 10, Andrade on the right, Zubair on the left, and centre forward, Camilo Duran leading the line. On the bench for Qarabag, Ramazanov, Buntic, Mami, Bahramov, Husseinov, the other Husseinov, Adai, Bolt, Borges, Kashchuk, Krabrizada, and Kerblani. For a team that we probably know a little bit more about, and certainly the players on the field. Nick Pope starts in goal for Newcastle. A back four of Kieran Trippier, Malik Chow, Dan Burn, and Lewis Hall. In midfield, Sandro Tonali, who really catapulted them to that FA Cup comeback at Villa Park at the weekend. He starts in midfield alongside Joe Willock, Anthony Alanga alongside Harvey Barnes and Anthony Gordon, with Nick Voltemade the centre forward for Newcastle tonight. On the bench, they've named 3 goalkeepers. Have Newcastle on their 11-man bench. Aaron Ramsdale, John Ruddy and Aidan Harris are all goalkeepers that make up the Newcastle bench, alongside Alex Murphy, Leo Sahar, Joe Linton, Ramsey Osula, Jacob Murphy and Sean Neve. A big night in Azerbaijan for Newcastle, but again it's a run of 3 away games in a row, and can they make it 3 away wins in a row? Spurs last midweek, Villa at the weekend. Can Qarabag be added to that list and take a lead back to St James's Park in 6 days' time? Kick-off between Qarabag and Newcastle in the Champions League knockout playoffs is next. A very good evening. Welcome to this one a little earlier than usual on a Champions League night, but again, a huge game and a Newcastle side that really have the expectation of trying to get through this tie and believing they can get through this tie against the Qarabag side, who ultimately needed other results for them to progress on match day 8 after their thumping. But they have, and through merit alone, are here. And as are Newcastle, of course, that draw away at PSG, albeit on match day 8 a pretty positive result, but they needed a victory if they were going to finish top 8. They were the only English team not to finish in the top 8 were Newcastle. 5 of the top 8 were English teams. And out of the 6 that qualified for the Champions League this year, all 6 have made it through to the knockouts. And all pushing for that round of 16, 5 of which are into that round of 16, of course. Newcastle want to join their fellow compatriots, but we will see what a tough task Qarabag can be. Albeit Liverpool made easy work of them at Anfield, thumping them 6-0. Here's a chance for Harvey Barnes right in the off here. Plays it across, but right into the hands, ultimately, of Kuchelski. And that's one thing about the Newcastle team tonight. There's a lot of pace, a lot of threat on the counter. You got Harvey Barnes, Anthony Alanga, Anthony Gordon. 3 really quick, pacey players. And then the dominance of Nick Voltemade in the air. Hall down the left-hand side to Barnes, who skips away from his full-back and links it back up with Lewis Hall. Qarabag in their home strip of all black with white trimmings and gold in their lettering of their kits, and Newcastle in their 3rd strip, I believe, with their away strip nonetheless, of green shirts, white shorts. That's a nice ball by Dan Burn. Anthony Gordon finds the net, and that's the perfect start for Newcastle. Burns ball, Gordon's finish. Qarabag 0, Newcastle United 1 after just 2 minutes. And that's the perfect start for Eddie Howe's team, who need a quick start, and that's exactly what they've got. Again, it's Dan Burn. He just breaks forward under pressure, kind of sees off that press, and as he plays it through, just straight through for the unrunning Anthony Gordon, who angled his run well, and then just struck it first time across goal into the far corner. Beautiful finish. It tucked in the far corner for Anthony Gordon. And Newcastle up and running from the off. His first goal since he scored against Liverpool on the 31st of January at Anfield. His first Champions League goal since the 3-0 victory over PSV Eindhoven on match day 7 of the league phase. And Anthony Gordon gets Newcastle off to the most perfect of starts. again here, Newcastle. Barnes' cross was just defended away by Medina, but again, piling on the pressure from the off here, Newcastle. Barnes with an effort. Was easily picked up by Kachelski, but then the Gordon goal. They continue to push forward, but here come Qarabag on the breakaway. Silva. Here's Andrada. The ball played down the left-hand side here to Zubir. Jankovic. Wanting to get some possession, Qarabag, after it's a pretty tough start. Under pressure and concede an early goal. It's a nice ball into Montiel. Plays it out to the left-hand side. Back to Montiel again. It's drifted out to that left channel. Bricks to the byline as he tries the cross that had already gone behind for a goal kick. Nonetheless. See this again from Dan Burn. Nice poke through ball. And Anthony Gordon just easy as you like. Beautiful goal. You've got to say the Newcastle fans enjoyed that one. Over 800 Newcastle fans have made the trip all the way out to Baku in Azerbaijan. And it's not an easy trip to make, especially midweek as well. It's quite a distance away. It's the longest trip possible from any of the Champions League teams this season in terms of the distance between two clubs. Here they come on the break down the left here for Qarabag. Ball right the way through. It's picked up by Montiel here. Trying to work a little edge of space as he plays it down the right for Andrada, who wins the corner. It was nicely worked, but done well by Andrada and got the block out of Kieran Trippier. Puts it behind for the corner. Montiel's delivery straight into the hands of Nick Pope. No real concern there for Newcastle. Well, just to really kind of sum up Qarabag's Champions League campaign so far. Of course, they finished 22nd in the Champions League phase. They have the graphic here. As Anthony Alanga plays it through to Willock. Now Barnes. Good save out of Kachelski again. It will be a corner actually. They tried to clear it away. The ball had gone behind the line. It will be another corner. See it here. Again, those runners from midfield. It's Joe Willock this time. The ball's played through. He just steps back, takes control, lays it out wide to the left for Harvey Barnes, who strikes first time with his right foot. Good save by Kachelski. And then the ball goes behind off the save for the corner. An end-to-end start, to be fair. Trippier to deliver this first corner of the game for Newcastle. Right footed to the edge of the box. Dropped. Tonali. Shot blocked. Trippier receives it again, though. Trippier to the back post. The header is in. And it's Malik Chow, I believe, that's headed it home. And Newcastle 2 to the good inside 8 minutes. They're running away with this. And again, see, really nicely taken corner by Newcastle. By Kieran Trippier. Goes for the delivery to the edge of the box. Picked up by Sandro Tonali. Struck it first time, well blocked, but it rebounds back out to Trippier on the left-hand side and puts in a delicious cross. And leaping at the back post was Malik Chow, who guided it back across goal. Goalkeeper had no chance. Wonderful header, wonderful goal. Qarabag 0, Newcastle 2. And the fear is already that Newcastle United are cruising their way to progression even after just 8 minutes. That they are off to the, I mean, it's silly to say, but they're off to the most incredible of starts. 8 minutes and they lead by 2-0 in a tough away atmosphere. And remember, the second leg at St James's Park in 6 days' time. They are checking though. VAR, I don't know what they're checking, but they are checking something in terms of the goal, but checked and completed, and the goal stands. So 2-0 it is, and a start that couldn't have been much better for Newcastle, and a start that couldn't have been much worse for Qarabag in terms of the balance of things. When we talk about it, tricky away ties and tough places to go, but Newcastle have rose above all that, and their quality has shone through in the first 9-10 minutes. That seems to be much superior to their opponents, and already made easy work of the first 10 minutes of this game. And kind of the belief now amongst Newcastle, although they'll not get carried away with the fact that they have scored 2 goals so early and so quickly, but the belief now, I'm sure, within the Newcastle team is that can they go on and get more and maybe try and take this time, put it to bed tonight ahead of next week. And we talked a lot recently about Newcastle failing to get that top 8 spot, kind of put so much extra pressure on the schedule. It's already congested as it is. And these extra 2 games, a Premier League side that's, of course, now still in the FA Cup and want to go as far as they can in every competition. The more congestion and the more games you have to play against a team that's already struggled with injuries, something you don't want. But if tonight they can use this game to try and make next week a bit of a dead rubber in a sense, no offence, but maybe try and take this game and this tie away from Qarabag before they even play a second leg next week. Here's Harvey Barnes breaking forward again, rolls it in behind for Willock. He tries to spin as he shot there, but easily defended by Medina. Every time Newcastle break forward, you think they're going to have a shot on goal. Just the sheer pace of their forward players. I said it already. The added pace of those attackers, and they're just dominating the defenders at the moment. And really, I think the Qarabag defence has been tormented in the first 12 minutes. And the scoreline pretty fairly reflects that. Hall trying to poke it through. Gordon flips onto the loose ball. Voltamata 2. Now Barnes. Square back across. Willock just going to feed it out to the right hand side. Taken in by Trippier. Back to Willock. Goes for the little flick in behind. Trippier trying the cross. Blocked by Medina again, who's getting in the way of everything at the minute as he best he can. Hall to Barnes. Tippy tapper right the way through. Barnes made the runner behind, and Kuchelski had to come and smother, but I have to say it's very basic defending from Qarabag. You know, it's very easy, a little 1-2 between Barnes and Willock. Harvey Barnes again escaped them behind, no one tracked the run, and they're being left on another planet here at the minute. Qarabag, they're being run all over. Hall down the line to Barnes. Inside to Gordon and across now to Alanga, who just with a loose pass gave it away. Ultimately a rare bit of possession for Qarabag. Is guided back by Malik Chow to his goalkeeper. He probably actually scored his header before he had to make any sort of defensive intervention in the game, Malik Chow. Tonali to Gordon. Again holding off his marker, and look at the space for the runner behind. Gordon! Good save out of Kachelski. Again, every time it's the give and goes that Qarabag are so unable to deal with. And the runners off the back of defenders are causing so many problems. Just can't keep a hold of it. Montiel. Andrada. Montiel. Back inside it comes to Bacalo and across to Jankovic. Just need to get a bit of possession, Qarabag, and get it up the field a little bit. Because every time Newcastle have the ball, they're popping it around for fun and creating really good triangles and combinations and tearing them apart defensively. Well, before that second goal for Newcastle, I was going to tell you how Qarabag's Champions League campaign went in terms of the league phase. They started incredibly, actually, beating Benfica and Copenhagen in their first two matches. 3-2 victory in Benfica, and then the 2-0 victory here against FC Copenhagen. Followed that with a 4-game winless run in the league phase, albeit important games and some tough games in there. I mean, a trip to Athletic Club, Napoli, home against Ajax. But key to that was a 2-2 draw here against Chelsea on match day 4. Here's Gordon into the box, lays it back to Barnes, who tried to find the corner. Just guided wide. I think it took a deflection. We'll see it go for the corner, but as I was saying, the 3 defeats and 4 in the middle of the campaign, and then that big win over Frankfurt again here before that thumping defeat on match day 8 away at Liverpool. So in terms of their home form in the Champions League, it hasn't been too shabby for Qarabag. 2 wins, a draw and 1 defeat from their 4 league phase games at home, including wins, as I said, over Copenhagen and Frankfurt, and a draw against Chelsea. So it's not completely awful. And their home form was key to them getting to this stage, but at the moment, faltering at home this evening. Well, that corner into the back post over the head of Gordon that time. And we'll see it out for a throw on the far side. Only 16 minutes gone here. Newcastle lead by 2 goals to 0. We see the second goal again. Well, they were checking for a possible offside against Kieran Trippier from the second phase of the corner. That's why they checked the goal, but it was quite clearly a yard or so onside. Great delivery. And a fantastically guided header by Malik Chow back across goal. Takes real kind of core strength to kind of direct that header back across goal from that sort of range and position, to guide it as he did. Really nicely done. But I mean, the many chances Newcastle have had, they've had 8 shots, 5 shots on target. I mean, they've been all over Qarabag, and this tie probably should be done by now after just 17 minutes because of the many chances they've had so far, Newcastle. Take nothing away from the start they've had, though. It's quite fantastic. Here's Barnes. Alanga, back to Hall. Barnes. Popping it around. Comfort and control. Voltamata trying to flick it. Barnes, as he came back, slipped. And cleared away by Qarabag out for the throw. But again, it's basics defensively for Qarabag, where they're having really kind of been easily stopped, and Newcastle are just roaming through them with fun. I mean, the positional sense of some of the players, either diving in or stepping off and not really sticking with their markers or in their zones. They just look like they're chasing shadows out there. Qarabag, and that's the worrying sign. We're so early in the game that usually you would say late in a game that a team that's maybe your inferior can just show fatigue, and that will cause their concentration issues. But right from the off, it's just been a mismatch. As Alanga tackled and fouled by Jankovic, as he did get the better of the man, Alanga, but was taken down in the process, and that's going to be a free kick given by the referee. Referee this evening, by the way, Espen Eskas from Norway. Easy for me to say. Espen Eskas. Great name. So another free kick here for Newcastle. Lewis Hall to take on this right-hand side. 19.5 minutes gone. Ball trying to go direct. Kachelski had to get his hands to that again. And then Zubair putting it out for the throw, but Lewis Hall with an audacious one, trying to go direct from the free kick there. Trying to catch everybody out. Really good delivery. And Kachelski threw his hand at it, got it away. And already some issues here for Qarabag. They have a player down, and already I believe a player ready and waiting to enter the fray. It is the number 13, Balul Mastfazada. Mustafazada, who's down, receiving some treatment. And Gurbanov, the Azerbaijani coach, is kind of trying to get a hold of his players. Believe it or not, Gurbanov has been the head coach of Qarabag for 18 years. He took over in August of 2008 and has overseen over 720 matches as the head coach. Has a really good record, the 53-year-old. He was 35 when he took over at the football club. And of course, in tandem, of course, was the Azerbaijan head coach as well for the national team. We get the game back underway, and Mustafazada was taken off, and the replacement has been made. Danny Bolt, I said, who was ready and waiting to enter the fray. He's come on. The 26-year-old Brazilian has come on, and he played just 4 days ago in the 1-0 win over Imisli in the Azerbaijan Premier League for Qarabag in their 1-0 victory. Gotta say though, the question marks over whether the change was made because due to the injury to Mustafazada, but at the same time, you know, tactically could have been another reason as to why, because they've looked like torn apart. As there was a potential red card checked there by VAR that was checked and cleared. I believe that was against a Newcastle player, Nick Voltemade, I believe, but nothing has come from, and we play on. Byrne to Hall. Well challenged by Bolt. Broke down the right-hand side and tried the cross. Well blocked by Dan Byrne, but throw-in will come for the home side. 23 minutes gone, and after a pretty tricky start after 2 goals down in 8 minutes. That's 15. Albeit Newcastle have continued to have quite a number of chances. None of them have went into the back of the net. As Pope has to come to chase. Through ball there towards Zubair by Medina. And ultimately Nick Pope was able to mop it up. Well, I was going to show you a graphic a little earlier on the whole kind of context of these two coming into this game. Here it is. Well, Qarabag, as I said, finished 22nd in the league phase after a 6-0 defeat against Liverpool on match day 8. Newcastle finished 10 places above tonight's opponents in 12th in the league phase after, of course, their 1-1 draw away at PSG, the reigning European champions, on the final game of the league phase campaign. If they'd have won that game, they would have been in the top 8 and would have avoided this stage of the competition altogether and would have progressed automatically through to the round of 16 like their 5 other compatriots. But ultimately, that draw in Paris saw them down. Here's Gordon in behind to Barnes. Kaczewski again with a big save. I have to say the goalkeeper has been called into action more than enough times. He's made about 4 or 5 saves, and this could be edging towards double figures in terms of goals if the goalkeeper wasn't on the form he's been on so far tonight. Kaczewski's been everywhere, making some massive saves when he's needed to. The 2 that he really didn't save, the 2 goals, have pretty been not much he could do about them. Trippier to take this corner for Newcastle, right-footed. Into it again, Kaczewski gets his hands and clears. As Alanga tries to flick it back in. Off the head of Chow, and now chested down by Voltamata, who chases but loses the possession. And now Qarabag want to spring on the counter-attack. 3v3. Zubair fed down the left-hand side. Trying to go for the cross. Got a deflection and got the corner. Nicely done on the break there. Lewis Hall making the eventual block. They're still yet to have their first shot in the game, Qarabag. Newcastle have already hit double figures in terms of shots, 10 of them so far. That ball's delivered in short from the corner. Cleared away. Voltamata with a clearance, but picked back up as it's fed through. And another corner will come. Tonali this time making the block. Having some positivity in going forward here, Qarabag, and maybe some adjustments from the manager. We do say 2-0 is the most dangerous scoreline in football. Bolt goes straight from the throw in, the early substitute. Silva across to Medina. Nice hold up there in the middle. Montiel, who was a foul expected in there, but the referee said no as Alanga breaks away with the ball and gives it straight back to Matej Silva in the Qarabag defence. Nicked away though by Joe Willock from Jankovic, and a ball fed in behind Barnes on the half turn. Barnes leaves it for Gordon, and Kaczewski again with another incredible save. I mean, Harvey Barnes and Anthony Gordon could have hat-tricks galore, but for both of them at the minute, if Kaczewski wasn't between the sticks. I mean, Harvey Barnes just well blocked in the end by the defender, but the ball bounces into Anthony Gordon, who toe pokes it towards goal. And Matej Kaczewski with another huge save. He's made 6 saves so far. It's incredible what we've seen so far in terms of the many chances Newcastle have had. Corner taken short, Gordon cuts it back to Hall, who rolls it to the edge of the area. Barnes! Then Willock! Two big blocks. They want a penalty there for handball, Newcastle, but referee moved, and VAR I'm sure will check, but for the moment we play on. But I have to say, again from the corner, I mean, Qarabag far too easy. Far too easy for Newcastle. Well, the referee has paused the game. We said there was a potential penalty check underway by the VAR. See it here from Harvey Barnes' shot. Oh, I don't like this. It does hit his arm, but his arm is holding him up and he's facing away from the ball. I mean, he's trying to block the shot. He uses his arm for leverage in terms of balance so that he doesn't collide with the floor. I don't think that's a penalty in my opinion. The referee's going to go to the screen, and we've seen it before in Europe. It's a very low threshold bar for handball. But I mean, he's facing away from the ball. He's trying to block the shot. He's diving towards the ground to get the block. You're not going to allow someone to slide onto the ground without trying to use their arm as leverage so that they don't collide with the ground and hurt themselves. I mean, if this is given, it's another example of just sheer stupidity, really. The referee has a couple of looks at it, and the decision is a penalty. Well, we know European footballer is an incredibly low bar when it comes to handball. Even if it clips off your pinky finger, it's given as handball no matter what the situation. And I have to say, it's another example of something I just don't like. I mean, you have at this rate, you're wanting them to cut their arms off and disappear because there's nothing that the defender can do. Newcastle will clearly argue that it should be a penalty. Obviously they will. It benefits them. And Qarabag will clearly argue the contrary. But in my opinion, to get through the muddling of all of it, at the end of the day, I don't think it's a penalty. I think it's a really, really poor decision. But Anthony Gordon, who's had quite a few of his shots saved by Kachelski tonight. Mateusz Kachelski's going to be needed again here for Qarabag, so that this scoreline doesn't get worse for the hosts. We've actually held it at 2-0 for the last 23 minutes. But Anthony Gordon, who opened the scoring inside 2 minutes tonight, can he make it 3-0 and give Newcastle an unbelievable lead in the first half here in Azerbaijan? Anthony Gordon against Kachelski. A battle Kachelski's won on a few occasions tonight already. Anthony Gordon puts that one home, no doubt about it. And Newcastle add a third to their tally. Anthony Gordon's second of the night, when he could have had so many more on so many more occasions so far. But from the spot, it's 3-0 to Newcastle, and they have one eye clearly on that round of 16 spot. And we've only played 32 minutes of the first leg of this tie. Good strike. Kind of scripts around the ball. Kind of gets a real good connection with it, Anthony Gordon, to that left-hand side. Keeper dives to the right way, but the quality of the shot is too good to keep it out. And I'm hearing that the decision to give the penalty was due to an unnatural position of his hand. Now, I don't understand how or why or even on what planet that's unnatural. But according to the officials, it was handball, and according to the officials, should have been given. Oh, Gordon's nipped it away. Gordon's in again. Gordon for the hat-trick. 4-0. He's completed the hat-trick. An incredible from Anthony Gordon. Stole it away from Medina. And slotted past Kachelski, and it made it 4. Newcastle are finally putting their efforts into the back of the net past Kachelski. And this game has gone from bad to worse to nightmarish for Qarabag, who are seeing their knockout position in this competition come crashing down as every second ticks by. It's Medini tries to take control of it, and Gordon right on him at a rate of knots. Does well, beats the bounce, just nicks it away. Poor from the defender, rolls it past Kachelski and tucks it home. Kachelski's claiming that he was hurt in the process. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's 4-0, and Anthony Gordon has his a Champions League hat-trick. Incredible. 2 goals in 2 minutes for Anthony Gordon. One from the penalty spot and about 10 or 15 seconds from the kickoff. He puts it into the back of the net for 4-0. And I said at 2-0, fears that this tie could be over tonight. I think this tie's over before we even get to half-time. And you gotta say, that's their 14th shot, their 9th shot on target, and an XG of 3.61. And the goalkeeper's made 5 saves, and they're 4-0 up. I mean, if there's ever an explanation of sheer and utter domination, it's this first 35 minutes from Newcastle. I gotta say, Anthony Gordon this season in the Champions League, albeit 3 of them have come tonight, but take nothing away from him. That's now 9 goals in the Champions League in 9 appearances this season. 11 goal involvements in total. An incredible campaign that he is producing in front of goal for Newcastle. Look at the domination of the stats. I mean, there's literally 0 on the board for Qarabag. They haven't had a shot. They've not even been anywhere near Nick Pope's goal. And I think at this point, they all want a goal now, Newcastle. Barnes into the area. Taken down by Hall, trying to drag it into a shooting position, but everybody dropping back now for Qarabag, which is probably 35 minutes too late, but I mean, no one could have seen this coming. Albeit, we talked about Qarabag, all the build-up to the game has just gone out the window completely. Whether this could be a tricky night for Newcastle, Qarabag could make it tough. Could be a real kind of tough opponent, but it's been anything but that. Newcastle have just had their way with Qarabag. Here's Harvey Barnes, tiptoeing down the left-hand side. Plays it back to Hall. Rolls it in, failed, trying to find Voltamata. Intercepted, and Qarabag again trying to scramble around to keep the possession, but there's no way at all they're able just to keep a hold of the ball at the minute. Here's Voltamata. Does well in a tight space, Nick Voltamata. Still hold of the ball as he lays it back to Tonali. Trippier. Nice ball into Barnes. Right, Hall picks it up again. Pokes it out for the throw in. It comes deflected. Well, there's no doubt about next week. I said last night, we'll see how the ties go to decide what matches we're going to cover next week. Well, I think we're going to have to do a bit of rescheduling because I don't think we're going to be watching Newcastle against Qarabag next Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. And a bit of thinking to do to see which one of the later kickoffs tonight Of course, all of tonight's games will be played next Tuesday, and all of last night's games will be played next Wednesday. So we'll see which of the ties from tonight's results we'll want to have a close eye on come next week. We'll see where we stand with all of those. Because I got to tell you, I don't think this will be the most watched Champions League game come next week. Let's just say that. In terms of competitiveness. Because at the minute, as it continues as it does, Newcastle will probably, I mean, they could field half a team next week and still get through the tie if it continues at this rate. Who said that a trip to Baku was so bad? It's the place no one wanted to go this season. Well, Newcastle having their way with it at the minute. Montiel with the corner into the hands of Nick Pope. They've racked up the corners. 4 corners apiece now between the sides, but not been able to create any threat whatsoever from the set pieces so far, Qarabag. That's a late challenge on Alanga. It's going to get another free kick. This time it's Bicalo that with the late challenge. He just left a leg in on Alanga. Easy as you like to give a free kick there. The referee. And they're all up there now, the Newcastle defenders amongst them. Alanga, right footed delivery, header on by Byrne. Straight down the throat of Kachelski. Well, his centre-back partner's already getting in the scoring action, Malik Chow. Dan Byrne wasn't too far away with his header there. Beautiful skill here from Harvey Barnes. Inside to Hall, rolls it in behind for Voltamata, who just had a clip there from the defenders. And it's going to go behind for the corner. Was he given a goal kick, the referee? Says goal kick. Initially I think he gave a corner there. See Alanga's delivery and Burns' header again, and goalkeeper had it all day long, to be fair. A reminder for you, we are back with Champions League action next week, but it's Premier League that once again takes over from the weekend. We're back with the normal Premier League schedule, and we have a huge game at the Etihad Saturday night. Manchester City against Newcastle in that one. Saturday, 8 o'clock on LFS as we get our Premier League weekend underway. We have a double header on Sunday as well for you. Where we're going to watch Nottingham Forest host Liverpool at 2 o'clock before the North London derby at Spurs against Arsenal at 4:30 from the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. That's on Sunday. Trippier with a corner. Kachelski had to punch it away. Looked like it was dipping in the near post there. Kachelski had to punch. See it here. It was blocked by Dan Byrne, and he just had to punch it away. Looked like it was sneaking in. Another corner will come. I think he's been a one-man show for Qarabag tonight, Kachelski. Here's Tonali, right-footed delivery. Kachelski again got something to it. Voltaman is in the mix, but the free kick's going to go the way of the home side. Qarabag, and Kachelski gets a little bit of a breather. I mean, a first half that's been... He's done well and still conceded four goals. That's how bad this first half has been for Qarabag as a whole. Their goalkeeper's been their best player, and they've still conceded 4 goals. And into the final few minutes of the first half. And a crowd that I'm sure came into this game with a lot of optimism tonight. A lot of belief that their side could really kind of break expectation and cause a little bit of a shock. It's been anything but that for them tonight. They've really struggled. Gordon's in behind again. Ball bobbled away from Kachelski. It's another penalty. Kachelski caught Anthony Gordon. Goes over, does Gordon. And it's another penalty to Newcastle. Again, it's horrendous defending. And I feel sorry for the goalkeeper because he has to try and do something because none of his defenders are doing anything. And I mean, what on earth? You conceded 4 goals and you're trying to pass it back to your defence when there's 3 Newcastle players around you. I mean, just get rid of it. It's sheer stupidity, really. And the goalkeeper, he comes for it. He's always has to come for it. He's not going to stand and watch Anthony Gordon charge towards goal. So I feel sorry for the goalkeeper, but it's a penalty, no doubt about it. But it's the defending. I mean, I have to say, the least worst defender for Qarabag was the centre-back that was substituted off, because he's played the least amount of minutes out of all of them. I mean, it's horrendous defending. And they're arguing with each other, but I mean, I don't understand. It's bizarre. And now Anthony Gordon stands over this one, right on the verge of 45, to try and make it 5-0 to Newcastle and get his 4th of the night. There's 3 added minutes at the end of the first half. And Anthony Gordon wants to add his name to a very exclusive list of players that have scored 4 goals in a Champions League game. I don't think many have. Anthony Gordon might join them here to make it 5-0. Anthony Gordon, 5-0 it is. Lovely penalty. Far right corner. Kachelski again dived the right way, but Gordon's accuracy in his finish tucks it home, and 5-0 it is. And the tie is no doubt about it now. If there was any doubt about it a few minutes ago, there's no question whatsoever that this tie is done and dusted. 5-0, and we still haven't even had the half-time interval yet. Beautifully taken penalty, by the way, by Anthony Gordon. Kachelski again goes the right way, but it's too good quality. It's incredible quality from Anthony Gordon, and the keeper has absolutely no chance. And you got to say, some penalties are unsavable. That one's one of those in that category. And Anthony Gordon, I mean, I'll find you the list at half-time. And you have to say, albeit we have to wait until the next Friday before we find out who will play who in the round of 16. But one thing I can tell you is that Newcastle's name will be in that hat for the draw, and Qarabag's certainly will not. Again, they're in again. Lewis Hall whips it in. I mean, at this rate, we are getting to the territory of sheer embarrassment, really. This is their home leg for Qarabag of this tie. So if it's this bad in this leg, I mean, what can next week produce? I mean, unbelievable. Well, there are a number of players have scored 4 Champions League goals in the competition. The most recent player to do that was Kylian Mbappe, who scored 4 against Olympiacos back in November of this season. Harry Kane's along that race, Robert Lewandowski, all the big names, Ronaldo, Inzaghi, Van Nistelrooy, Shevchenko, Messi, Ibrahimovic, Gnabry, Giroud, Sebastian Haller, by the way, as well, Van Basten. I mean, all the big names And Anthony Gordon's got a unique opportunity to join a very exclusive list of only 3 players in history of the Champions League that have scored 5 goals in a match. Erling Haaland in 2023 when Man City beat Leipzig 7-0. Luis Adriano back in 2014 when Shakhtar beat BATE 7-0. And Lionel Messi, who scored 5 in Barcelona's 7-1 win over Leverkusen back in 2012. And as the half-time whistle goes, Anthony Gordon with 4 of Newcastle's 5 goals and has them more than comfortably on their way to the round of 16. And we're only halfway through the first leg of this tie. Half-time, it's Qarabag 0, Newcastle 5. Sure, one last kick. This is going to be it. This is the moment. Vicario kicks this. And Liverpool are there. Liverpool are Premier League champions. And there it comes. Crystal Palace, for the very first time in their history, are FA Cup winners. Oh, he's found the net. Oh, what a goal. Kvaratskhelia is through, wants to add a 4th, and does so. Ahmad, oh my goodness me. That is absolutely unbelievable. Rice again. Oh! You thought he couldn't beat the first one. He's gone and battered it. Another whip ball in. The header is in by Virgil van Dijk. Incredible. Welcome back to Champions League Live this Wednesday night as we round off our first leg action of the knockout playoffs, and at half-time it is quite comfortably going one way. In Baku in Azerbaijan, it's Qarabag 0, Newcastle United 5 at the break. An incredible first half from Newcastle where they've completely and utterly destroyed Qarabag by 5 goals to 0. But as promised, as I promised before the kickoff, we're going to talk about a bit more about last night's action, and in terms of a pretty sad moment, where there's been a lot of talk over the last 24 hours or so since this really unfortunate and quite disappointing incident last night in the Real Madrid victory against Benfica, where they won 1-0 at Real Madrid after Vinicius scored, and after that it's where it all came and took a downturn when Vinicius Jr. was allegedly, we have to still say that until he's proven guilty, but allegedly racially abused by Gianluca Prestiani. Of course, Vinicius Jr. Reported it to the referee, and Kylian Mbappe has since reacted in saying that he heard that Prestiani called Vinicius Jr. a monkey 5 times. That was what Kylian Mbappe said he heard from that incident last night. Now, I have to say a couple of points. Under no circumstances, I mean, I'm not the moral arbiter, but this is my opinion, and rightfully it should be everybody's opinion. Under no circumstances should racism be accepted or tolerated in either football or society. That's pretty clear and obvious. But I think what disappointed a lot of people from last night is that Vinicius Jr. did everything that UEFA and I'm sure the organisers would have wanted him to do, and still he's come out looking worse than the alleged perpetrator in Gianluca Prestiani. Vinicius Jr.'s had the backlash. Vinicius Jr.'s been talked about how he antagonises and how he winds people up and the way he acts and the way he kind of celebrated last night. All ridiculous rubbish. The way he acted was normal. He scored an unbelievable goal in a huge Champions League game, and anything afterwards, the way the reaction was to him, was completely unjustified and completely ridiculous. But I think what made real niceties out of that last night, and it's a really ugly situation that there was very little niceties out of, but I think the reaction of the Real Madrid players was incredible. From Kylian Mbappe, Trent Alexander-Arnold, amongst others as well, even the head coach of Arbeloa, completely and utterly backing their player and saying that this is just not acceptable and should not be accepted in football. And it's a disgrace to the sport, I think, is what Trent Alexander-Arnold called it. And Kylian Mbappe wouldn't even name Gianluca Prestiani when he spoke about it. Said he deserves no respect and should never play Champions League football again. But contrasting to that, the Benfica head coach Jose Mourinho was very kind of flippant in his remarks, and it was really disappointing, Jose Mourinho's reaction. A real figurehead in European football responding so disappointingly, and that kind of he said in no uncertain terms in a roundabout way that kind of Vinicius Jr. brought it amongst himself in the way that he antagonised the crowd and kind of goaded them on. But in no way should that excuse what happened. So I think Jose Mourinho should reflect on a very disappointing and, quite frankly, disgusting response to the racist abuse, and saying that Benfica is not a racist club because their best player, Eusebio, was black. I mean, a ridiculous argument from Jose Mourinho. But the ultimate underlying factor of all this, Gianluca Prestiani, is a coward. Whatever he said to Vinicius Jr., only he knows and Vinicius Jr. knows, and maybe Kylian Mbappe, who said he overheard it, only they know what actually happened, because he was that courageous, Gianluca Prestiani, that he didn't actually had the balls, in a sense, or the real guile to actually go and say it to his face. Had to cover his face, had to cover his mouth, so that nobody would find out what he actually said. And that really sums it up, in my opinion. That already makes you look guilty of something. And whatever he said, he has violently denies it, as he would. but in no uncertain terms, it was disgusting and horrendous, and we just have to make that very clear that ultimately the main victim in all this is Vinicius Jr., who again, for not the first time in his career, has been racially abused, and still comes out in social media and in the wider world as being the antagonist or the one that brought it amongst himself, according to Jose Mourinho and others, which is completely and utterly disproportionate and disgusting in terms of a response to the situation. But those are my comments. Those are what I think. We'll hear what UEFA have to say in a disciplinary kind of discussion. They released a statement today, UEFA, that they were combing their way through the refereeing reports of all the games from last night, and that if there's anything to be decided in terms of an investigation, that they will announce that at a later stage. But an unbelievably disgusting moment last night, and horrible. Absolutely horrible. And there's been a lot of discourse, a lot of talk today about the whole situation, and I think everything about it was, I think, completely and utterly horrendous. That he celebrated kind of turned it into him being the antagonist, which is completely and utterly wrong. But yeah, we'll see what comes of that. But those are my views on it, and let us know what you think in the chat, and let's have a conversation about it, because the more you have a conversation about it, the more you talk about it, the more you kind of say, we're not allowing this in our sport, that the less going to happen. And the most shocking thing, I think, of it all, a lot of the time it's racist abuse from the stands, and I'm not saying at any stage that's excusable, of course it's not, but from a fellow player to allegedly racially abuse another professional footballer is the most surprising part of this, and it's the most disgusting part of it, really, in the fact that we see them all as equals when they come onto the field, and for a player to kind of go out of his way to abuse another footballer like that is completely and utterly disgusting, and in no uncertain terms should not be accepted in football. There's an issue here. Anthony Alanga's injured off the field, so we are back underway, by the way. 3 minutes gone in the second half between Qarabag and Newcastle. Nothing's happened, but Alanga was off the field hurt, as he kind of slipped as he left the field and hurt himself there, Anthony Alanga, but he's okay, thankfully. As Arab in the chat says, I was about to skip this game because I thought it would be boring, but 5-0, I'm not missing this. Thank you very much for joining us. Anthony Gordon with 4 of the 5 goals from the first half for Newcastle. Malik Chow with the other, in a game that has been dominated completely by Newcastle. They've destroyed Qarabag, really, right the way from the very off. And this has been no word of a lie, not a contest. Not a contest whatsoever. As Arab says, it wasn't Vinny's fault. He made that dirty celebration, but there is no need to call him a monkey. Maybe call him out for that, not racially slur him. 100%. I mean, there is no excuse at all for racial slurs or any sort of discrimination against anyone in any situation, but that there is no justification, and I completely agree with you there. No matter what you felt about whether he antagonised the crowd or was antagonistic in his celebration, he celebrated a goal that was a beautiful goal. Take nothing away from the finish, an incredible goal, and he celebrated like we've seen for decades in football. I mean, it was an unorthodox celebration, I'll give him that, but he was well within his rights to celebrate. And I think the yellow card for excessive celebration, I think, doesn't help the fact that they have this argument of, he antagonised the crowd and he did this and he did that because the referee gave him a yellow card. He still doesn't know why he got a yellow card. I partly don't think I understand why he got a yellow card. I was a bit bemused by it at the time. I didn't understand it, but at the end of the day, listen, unfortunately, that's sadly the world that we live in at the minute, and it's quite disgusting that we do live in a world that this is still happening, And how many times do we have to say this, and how many times do we have to call it out, and how many times do you have to reiterate the message? But at the end of the day, something needs to be done. And if Gianluca Prestiani's not going to admit it, which he won't, I mean, he won't, but because he had the cowardly response of, yeah, I'm not going to tell you I'm not going to allow you to see what I'm going to say. I'm going to cover it and keep it to be between me and the players in my immediate vicinity, because I don't want the cameras to see. I think that says a lot more than if he had showed it, because he's cowardly. And at the end of the day, as I said, he didn't have the balls to actually stand there and say what he wanted to say without the fear of repercussion. And that's even worse than a racist, someone who pretends they're not racist. If there is anything worse than being racist, but you know what I mean. The fact that you can't even stand on your convictions and say what you wanted to say without being embarrassed by what you're going to say proves that you know what's wrong, and it's completely and utterly disproportionate in what you're going to say, and it's disgusting. But he claims his innocence. Benfica are backing their player, and Jose Mourinho's taken a pretty horrible side of things, where he's tried to stay neutral but then trying to victim blame Vinicius Jr. Said that he had brought it amongst himself and had he done this and all that rubbish. A lot of shite. Back to this match though. And 6 minutes gone in the second half. Newcastle lead by 5 goals to 0. And if there was any doubt after 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, at 5-0, there's surely no doubt as to what way this is going. And I was already looking at next Tuesday's schedule in the Champions League, of which games we might eye up for the return legs. But we have to wait on the other games that kick off later tonight to see what the setup are for next Tuesday's games, to see who we will want to watch. I believe, unless I'm wrong at this moment, but I believe that unless we make a different decision, but at the moment we're gonna do the Real Madrid Benfica game next Wednesday night, the return leg of that, because albeit all the controversy about it, it's still a close tie at that one. Real Madrid have only won 1-0, so we'll see. But we'll wait and see kind of how we feel, or how I feel about that. But at the minute, Newcastle Qarabag, the return leg next Tuesday, is quite unlikely to be the game we're going to do next Tuesday, depending on what way the other ties end up. But at the moment, we want to give you an entertaining second leg, not one that's a pretty dead rubber. So we'll see. Here come Qarabag though, trying to break in behind. Shot was wide of the target. And I think they've won a corner here actually. They did make some half-time changes, but a half-time change by the way. Baravi Husseinov has come on for Leandro Andrade. So Husseinov is on the field. Montiel flicked through to Zubair, and the shot is snuck in. The flag's up though, but the shot's gone in. And the fullback, it was Elvin Jafarguliev, was the man who found the back of the net. They'll check at VAR, but the flag went up. And Jafarguliev, oh, that's a tight one. A really good finish, but Elvin Jafarguliev is the man who put the shot in past Nick Pope. But is he offside in the build-up? And the decision. We're checking the goal. The referee's got a hold of the ball for the moment. So VAR deciding whether Qarabag have got one back or not. And has Elvin Jafarguliev got a goal, his first of the season. The decision is a goal, and he has got his first of the season. Well, if it was a one-sided first half, Qarabag have made it sure that the second half isn't going to be like that, and they've got a goal back. albeit probably arbitrary at this rate, but they've got a goal. And that's a lot better than what they could have produced in the first half, where they didn't have a single shot to show for their first 45 minutes. And as we see it, it was tight, but he's clearly onside from the VAR check. It's poor from Newcastle. As if they're thinking, they're very complacent in the defending there, Newcastle. Very complacent defending. We'll get the full kind of down the line view of it very shortly, but Qarabag have got a goal back. And I don't want to get too excited because, my goodness me, it's one hell of a mountain to climb. But they've got a goal, and that's what you can give them. So fair dues to them. 5-0 down at half-time. What do you think? What do you think? What would those players have been thinking at half-time? We've been embarrassed. At least let's go out and try and fight and get something out of this game at all. Show some pride. Play for your teammates. Play for the badge. Play for something. And they've got to go back with their second shot of the game. Their first shot on target. And it's Qarabag 1, Newcastle 5. Incredible. One goal in 9 matches for Jafar Guliev. Qarabag left back. And the crowd are a little bit happier than they were at half time. Albeit they stuck with their team, I give them that. Chow down the left channel. Barnes. Bolt trying to press him away. Is Tonali. Fizzes to the right hand side. Jafar Guliev with the defending, but Alanga's there to set it up. A Wallach across, drops for Barnes. Shot was blocked. Cleared away. Only as far as Trippier though. And now Newcastle, I think, have been given a little bit of a shake by that goal. And say, if you take your foot off the gas, you'll be punished. A change of approach from Qarabag. More body central, more in the back line. And the defence that was getting torn to pieces in that first half. They were nowhere near the level. Nowhere near the level. Jafar Guliev has played it through. And every time they get a bit of possession, a bit of movement in between the lines, the crowd are cheering them on. And albeit probably one of the most unorthodox chances of a competitive tie. But you never know, we've seen it before in Europe. Ball flicked in behind, headed away by Chow, and Trippier with the back heel. Not picked up by a Newcastle shirt though. But Callio couldn't quite link it up further forward as Trippier intercepted. Hall nicely stepped in again. Qarabag on the move, the shots! Right down the throat of Nick Pope. That's better than what they were doing. And it's Montiel from the range. Again, better from Qarabag though, a bit more aggression. As we hit the hour mark inside the, I'll give you the full proper name of the stadium. The Tofiq Bahramov Republican Stadium in Baku. Qarabag with the goal of the second half. They get themselves on the board. and at least competing in the tie. Remontada is on, says the Arab. Well, it'll be one hell of a comeback if they do it. Ball fizzed into the box, bounces down, up and away from Barnes. A bit of a shove there on Tonali. He's going to get Newcastle a free kick. Yeah, Tonali just shoved over by Johnny Montiel. I get the aggression, but that's too aggressive. Montiel's effort had a good bit of spin on it, but ended up right down the throat of the goalkeeper as we see the official onside call. At least a good half yard onside there, I would say. And VAR got it completely correct. Excuse me. And it is 5-1. No tougher about trying to score more goals than trying to keep out of their own net in the second. Oh, I have to say, Kachelski was no man's land there, and Voltamata's header just skipped onto the roof of the net, but the keeper had no chance if that dropped in. He was coming flying for it and got nowhere near it. Got a little lucky that the header was too far over the crossbar by Voltamata. Kind of bounced off the top of his head rather than couldn't really direct it towards goal. Ball back by Chow, back towards Pope, who makes no question about getting rid of that ball. Trippier down the right hand side to Alanga, trying to play it through, well defended, and again hoofed clear. The second ball drops down though, and they've picked it back up. Damn, Byrne gets his foot in, and then Alanga came and got clean grasp to the ball. Trippier pings one forward but unable to keep possession. Got a little bit sloppy. The game a little scrappy in the last moment. Either side wanting to keep possession. And there was a Qarabag player who made a derby. Back to his feet is Jankovic. The referee has to check up on the player though, but he was kind of just caught there by Joe Willock. And he kind of kicked into Willock in that sense actually. Showing a little bit more promise though, Qarabag. Second half so far. Well, Qarabag are winless in 4 home games against English sides in Europe, losing and failing to score in 3 of those games. They did avoid defeat though in their most recent meeting against English opponents, and that was a 2-2 draw against Chelsea on match day 4 of this season's competition. One thing the two sides do have in common is they've both lost quite largely away at Anfield. Here comes Qarabag on the breakaway again. Zubair holds it up. The shot from Ryan, 6 a deflection. That carried wide. It had a good travel distance on that strike. It took a deflection on the way through. Gone for the corner, which Montiel's taken short. They want to keep this momentum here at the moment. Jankovic. Right back out to Montiel on the left. All the way back. Played through to the edge of the box, but nicked away by Willock. And he's got Gordon on the chase, but Willock runs into a man and loses possession. They wanted a foul there, Newcastle, but Willock just kind of charged into the back of his marker. And the referee's going to stop the game as both players are down, needing some treatments. And Mateus Silva just came across to try and block his man, and Willock just run into the back of him. It's not a foul. We see this chance again, beautifully held up by Zubair, and it's dropped back. And the shot caught really nicely here. It's not Jankovic, but it's Bacalio, it is. Pedro Bacalio. And the shot was travelling. Took a deflection that carried it wide for the corner, but some good efforts from Qarabag so far in the second half after the goal. We had the Montiel one, and then now Bacalio's one. I mean, they are showing some fighting spirit, are the hosts. Newcastle, their journey of over 2,500 miles to Qarabag, as I said, is the longest distance ever travelled by an English team for a UEFA Champions League away match in the competition's history. From the northeast of England to the southeast and to the far east of Azerbaijan in Baku. As Newcastle are going to make their changes, bring on some fresh legs. Jacob Murphy and Jacob Ramsey alongside Will Osula are all coming on. Anthony Alanga, Joe Willock and Anthony Gordon all coming off. So Gordon won't get that chance to join an exclusive club of players to score 5 goals in a single Champions League match, but he has added his name to the list of players who scored 4 goals in a single Champions League match, which is still an exclusive list of top quality players. And Anthony Gordon, incredible. Only one player this season other than Anthony Gordon has scored 4 goals in a single Champions League game, and that was Kylian Mbappe, as I said, back in November for Real Madrid in their 4-3 win over Olympiacos, I believe. So one of only 2 players to do it this season in the Champions League is Anthony Gordon. And a triple change for Newcastle, some fresh legs, some fresh attacking players, and some opportunities to get some momentum and rhythm in the legs of those Newcastle players. And a lot of those second string players, I would suspect, they come away with a huge victory here tonight. Newcastle will be playing in that return leg in 6 days' time. Of course, that trip to City at the weekend is, of course, a huge match they need to really keep a major focus on. Oh, Newcastle getting caught out of the back here. Qarabag are having the momentum this second half. Get another goal, you never know. Montiel! His cross was off Dan Burn behind for the corner. As I said about Newcastle, after their defeat at home to Brentford, they had the unfortunate sight of 4 away games in a row. They won away at Spurs, they won away at Villa in the FA Cup. They're winning quite comfortably here tonight. And they have a trip to Manchester City on Saturday night, so they're showing up on the road after what has been, as I said, a season of poor away performances for Newcastle. All campaign, really. Isn't it quite ironic that they've lost their last home game they've played and have won each of their last away games? Corner for Qarabag. Montiel left it for Zubair. Zubair works it into the box. Nice little 1-2. Zubair's cross. Up and away by Chow. Further cleared away. Trippier guided that one out for a throw. Now Medina was having a little trouble after he cleared the ball away from the bit of pressure from Will Osula. He had a little bit of problem, but he was okay to continue. Trippier. 20 minutes to go. Qarabag 1, Newcastle 5. Qarabag's goal coming in the 54th minute through Elvin Jafar Gulayev. And they had a VAR check for it, and the decision was goal. 20 to go. Albeit a minimal chance, but I mean, you never know. They've had the momentum of all of the second half at Qarabag, really. Newcastle haven't been able to lay a glove on them, really, which is quite strange, considering the way the first half went. They've had just 2 shots in the second half, Newcastle. None on target. Qarabag have had 4 shots, 2 on target. Maybe the question marks are, well, of course, they were 5 goals up, and maybe they've just were struck with a bit of complacency and have just kind of tried to manage the rest of the game to a finish and not really trying to run ragged because they know they're kind of really intense kind of schedule. But at the same time, Qarabag have had the momentum. That can all come crashing down, though. Here's Jacob Murphy. He's going to go for goal. Murphy gets the deflection, and that takes it in for 6. Murphy had a go from range. It was helped along the way, but it finds the net for the 6th time tonight for Newcastle. And this tie is done and dusted without any realms of doubt now. They might have believed they could scramble some crazy couple of goals, Qarabag, in the second half to make this somewhat of a contest. But one was surely all they were going to get, and it seems like all they're going to get. And Jacob Murphy gets the little bit of slice of luck with a deflection that takes it past Kachelski. But that's been the kind of night Newcastle have had. They've enjoyed the, unbelievable amount of chances they've had. And they probably should have more than what they have right now on the amount of chances they've created tonight. But it's 6, and that 5-goal advantage is restored. And their first shot on target of the second half. At the moment, Jacob Murphy gets the credit. Whether deflection was impactful enough to, in the end, discredit Jacob Murphy of the goal, but ultimately, that's the way it stands. Zubair breaks into the box here, but a chance for Qarabag to respond quickly. Ultimately, stood up well by Bernan Chow and cleared away by Trippier. At the moment, UEFA crediting the goal to Jacob Murphy. And just 4 minutes after coming off the bench, Jacob Murphy, he's found the net for only the 3rd time this season. He's scored. He's got 2 assists in the Champions League this season with 5 previous appearances he's made in the campaign. That's his first goal in the competition. And his first goal for Newcastle since the 3-1 defeat away at West Ham back in November. Actually scored in back-to-back Premier League games in that run when they beat Fulham 2-1 a few weeks prior. All of his action came in the early part of the season, Jacob Murphy, in terms of his production, his assists and goals. Hasn't had a goal contribution, Jacob Murphy, before tonight, since that goal away at West Ham. So it's well overdue. Evening, Andy. Thank you very much for joining us. Newcastle can afford not to spend themselves now. Of course they can. They're in a position of incredible dominance. And as I said, they don't need to push for more. They've got the advantage. They've surely got the unbelievable favouritism of the second leg at home next week, even with a 5-goal lead and the ability to rest a lot of players. And they've got a huge Premier League game in 3 days' time away at Manchester City. And on a run of 3 away wins in a row it will be. They'll take a lot of confidence into that game at the Etihad against the Man City side, who haven't been invincible this season. They have been able to be got at, but they are in a different complete battle to Newcastle this season in terms of their title race with Arsenal. It is seeming like a pretty limp title race, if I'm honest. Arsenal looking like they're going to see their way to the title. That'll be the question of Man City at the weekend, though. Ooh, that's a drag by Malik Chow. He got a real grip of his man there. He's going to get a yellow card, Malik Chow, but I have to say, real wrestle with his man there in Durant. Just kind of grabbed him round the face. Definitely a yellow card. Change going to be made here by Newcastle. Joe Linton's going to be coming on for some minutes. He's going to replace Kieran Trippier. A bit of rejigging for the Newcastle team. Qarabag trying to, again, keep a hold of the ball and maybe carve something out. You've won another free kick, but surely they must know that they find themselves in a pretty impossible position right now in this Champions League tie. I gotta say, Qarabag, to be fair to them, they've had a great run of it this season in the Champions League. Clearly, Newcastle have just been too good for them so far. Like Liverpool were too good for them on match day 8 and all of that, but just too good for them. And their defending in that first half was beyond, I have to say, one of the worst defensive first half performances, any performances I've ever seen. It was that basic. Free kick delivered in, it was towards Medina. It's gone all the way through. Tonali does just enough against his man. It's gone out for a goal kick. And Newcastle fans have been saying they're always worried about their defence, but seems to have got stronger. At one point Newcastle had no defenders and were playing Millie out of position. Well, I think if I'm honest, or Miley out of position, I think is what you mean. I still worry about Newcastle's defence. I think tonight is not a measure for their defence. I think maybe the goal that Qarabag scored is probably a measure of their defence, and the fact that they can get complacent, they can get a little bit sloppy. They don't look like a team that can put in a dominant defensive display and completely kind of hold out a side, if you know what I mean. They don't seem like a team that can go to the wars at defence. Like, they've got some real issues. I think Malik Chow, albeit tonight he's played well, he's got a goal and all of that, but at the same time, I still think there's a little bit of nervousness about him, and I think, for me, I think he's just a little bit too erratic at times, and his decision-making is not amongst the top. Kieran Trippier, I think, no disrespect to Kieran Trippier, but sometimes he can look a little bit legless out there. But there's no question about the left-hand side of that Newcastle defence. I mean, Lewis Hall, one of the best full-backs in the Premier League this season. No doubt about it. I think he's played really, really well at left-back. And then, of course, Dan Burn, who's the eternal force in defence. But they don't look like a team that are going to keep a lot of clean sheets, Newcastle. They can concede silly goals. And I think that's where the concern can be. That a lot of their performances this season and their lack of Premier League prowess, I mean, 10 wins, 10 defeats, 6 draws, sit mid-table in the Premier League. I think that's a lot down to a little bit of defensive frailty. I mean, they've conceded 37 goals this season. And if you want to be competing in the top 4, I think that's too many goals conceded to be up there amongst the best teams in the country, which Newcastle have been over the last few years. That's why they're in the Champions League. Here's Harvey Barnes holding the ball in the box. He's done a lot of the hard yards tonight, Harvey Barnes, without a goal. I think, to be fair, Anthony Gordon's hoovered up all the goals. 4 of the 6 goals tonight for Newcastle have been scored by Anthony Gordon. But I think overall, Newcastle in moments against, I think, take Liverpool for example. I think that Liverpool game was a view, and I think Eddie Howe at the time said it's not reflect. I think the scoreline is not reflective of the game. I disagreed with him on that, because I think on the night Newcastle gave away some sloppy goals, and Liverpool were probably really dominant in that second half against Newcastle, and they offered nothing. And that can happen to any team at Anfield, and when Liverpool are playing at their best, and I think they were really good that night. But I think for Newcastle, overall, against teams at the top, or teams that they probably should be competing with, or giving a good game, they're this season looking more defensively frail than they have in previous seasons. I think that's what letting them down. And there's been a lot of movement and inconsistency in the forward line of Newcastle, not able really to settle upon the same players, or able to get every player into to rotation in terms of their forms. So there's still things that Eddie Howe needs to figure out, but at the same time, arguably they've been punching above their weight a little bit in terms of in terms of Champions League football, because there's been a lot of Premier League teams over the last few years that have underperformed. Man United and Chelsea amongst them, who have been nowhere near the Champions League conversation in terms of consistently being there over the last few years. And Newcastle, along with Villa, have been teams that have took advantage of that, really, and used that to try and take up those extra spots. And credit to them. But I think in the long run, Newcastle are going to consistently get to the Champions League. They need to, one, keep a hold of their best players, and continually restructure, kind of rejuvenate the squad, keep moving, and keep getting better players, and keep building that squad. But it takes time. It's not an overnight success. And I mean, Eddie Howe and Newcastle are doing an incredible job. I mean, first trophy in 70 years last season, Champions League football in 2 of the last 3 campaigns. I mean, it's still an incredible feat what they're able to achieving. But I think we saw it with Villa at times last season. We're seeing it with Newcastle this season. We saw it with Newcastle even in the season where they were in the Champions League. When teams that aren't consistently used to playing Champions League football and then league football, you can see their league form can suffer at times because of that. And I think that's kind of what's happened to Newcastle. They've done so well in the Champions League this year that maybe their league form has just suffered a little bit because of it. And that's the tough job of trying to balance 3 games a week, all the competitions, and still getting the best results out of them as possible, and competing with the likes of Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United, Arsenal, Manchester City, and even Villa this season amongst them. Andy says teams that don't get Champions League regularly do struggle. As a Villa fan, Champions League hangovers are real. Yeah, 100%. It's proven. It has been proven that if you're not in the Champions League consistently, and you're not used to that schedule, and your players are not used to that schedule, that it is a real heavy toll on them. Qarabag are going to make some more changes. Montiel and Zubair are coming off, and Kade and Adai are coming on. So some changes for the home side late in the game. I have to say, in terms of English teams as a whole in the Champions League this season, I mean, looks like we're going to get 6 out of 6 English teams in the round of 16, which is, I mean, no question really about the country that's having the most success with their teams in Europe. That's England at the minute. I mean, even with Crystal Palace and Aston Villa and Nottingham Forest all doing well in their Conference League and the Europa League. So all the English teams are doing well in Europe this season. But in terms of the Champions League, 6 out of the 6. I mean, with Newcastle winning 6-1 here, it's very almost into certainty that they will be in the round of 16 draw come next week, the end of next week. And the 5 other teams already automatically qualified there due to their league phase positions. But I mean, it's a dominance that is they're taking a lot of advantage of, the English teams, that really we haven't seen before with the expanded Champions League, that so many teams from one country are doing so well. And they're checking for a possible handball there on Tonali, but didn't know very much about it. Arm was by his side, nothing in that. Oh, a lovely delivered ball here, headed down and across. Didn't have the pace to carry it home. It's cleared away though, and the shot from range, off target. Nick Pope wasn't worried. And he says all English semi-final maybe. Well, who knows? It's a possibility when you have 6 out of the 16 teams in the round of 16. I mean, you have a what is that percentage-wise? Just less a 40% chance, I think that is. 40-odd% chance. I mean, you have a very good opportunity. Jankovic was guiding that one, but just got his angles all wrong there. The referee have made another change. Sean Neve is on to replace Harvey Barnes. 18-year-old Sean Neve is on for Newcastle. And a senior debut for the football club tonight. In the last few minutes of this game. A reminder for you, we watched Newcastle at the weekend again when they head to Manchester City in the Premier League again. Saturday 8 o'clock kickoff. And we'll see what comes of that one. As I said, they'll be heading into that game, Newcastle, with 3 away wins on the bounce, which will be one hell of a run of form to take into the trip to the Etihad. Grabanley's coming on to replace Duran, who's been mostly non-existent tonight, I have to say. He's been feeding off less than scraps. He's been starved. Free kick though. Free kick delivered in by Murphy, headed on and bundled away from goal by Kachelski. Did enough to see off Will Asula. Another delivery, another header off target that time. Kachelski, I have to say, if there's any new Qarabag player that deserves a round of applause tonight, it's Kachelski. He's come under so much pressure tonight. He's had so many saves to make, and he's made quite a number of them. And those two back to back. Burns' header and then Asula's effort to try and poke it home. 2 very good saves. Wonderful. He's been incredible tonight, I have to say. And he still conceded 6 goals. I mean, the life of a goalkeeper, really. Last minute of the 90. We'll see how long will be added on. If I was the referee, within my jurisdiction, I would genuinely just say 1 minute, no more, and just blow the final whistle. No need to be too serious about all this. There's no major game-changing moment that's going to happen in additional time here. I have to say though, the second half's gone quicker than the first, in my opinion. And I think that's down to the fact that it's actually been a competitive game. Both sides have been actually on the ball. Both sides have been able to really test each other. Maybe that's down to the fact Newcastle have massively stood off the gas and just tried to manage the game to a finish. But in terms of, and it's 3 added minutes, in terms of Qarabag though, they've looked a little bit more defensively solid. But I have to say, not a night to remember at all for them. And a regretful second leg to come. In 6 days' time, Qarabag have a game in the Azerbaijan Premier League away at Neftchi at the weekends. Qarabag going on for the chase for the title in Azerbaijan. 4 points off the league leaders Sabah going into that weekend's game, and before they head to St James's Park next Tuesday night. It looks like their season in the Champions League will come to an end next Tuesday night. Very likely, and Newcastle will be riding off into the sunset into the round of 16. On a night that could have been difficult for Newcastle, could have started quite toughly for them. Right from the off, they really laid down the law. 3 minutes in, Anthony Gordon opened the scoring. Malik Chow then made it 2-0 after 8 minutes from a corner. 3 when Anthony Gordon converted from the spot. Then seconds after the restart made it 4 with a poor bit of defending from Medina. And then it was 5. Anthony Gordon completed the hat-trick with 4. And then got his 4th of the game. Newcastle's 5th from the penalty spot just on the brink of half-time. Into the second half though, Jafar Gulayev gave Qarabag a goal back, albeit a consolation nonetheless. Checked and cleared by VAR and given before Jacob Murphy had a shot deflected into the back of the Qarabag net for 6. That's the game rounded up really, but there's another chance, just behind Sean Neve. On his debut there, the youngster with a chance in front of goal, and it was just behind him, the cross. Last few seconds. Reminder for you, don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on post notifications if you haven't done so already. And we will of course have the full confirmation of the final scores from all of those late games on our socials a little later on. And we will tell you that we will round up all of the results from the 8 Champions League phase, or the Champions League knockout phase playoff first legs at the end of the evening's action. And a bit of a preview into next week as well for you. There's Newcastle with it at the back here to Malik Chow. And the final whistle goes. A night that is one to remember for Newcastle, one to forget for Qarabag. And Eddie Howe's team surely have not even probably 1 foot, almost 2 feet into the round of 16. A 5-goal lead to take back to St James's Park. Probably much past the expectations of tonight. They had a lot of expectation on them to come and win here, Newcastle. Their 3rd successive away victory in 3 different competitions, but this one the most dominant of them all. Gordon, Chow, Gordon, Jafar Gulayev, and then Murphy. All the goal scorers tonight. Anthony Gordon, a moment of real history for him. Only the 2nd player this season to score 4 goals in a Champions League game, and an exclusive list of players to do it in a single Champions League game in history. Newcastle, no doubt, and at this point, I'm not going out on a limb, but I think the second leg is a pretty much dead rubber, as Newcastle are all but into the round of 16, and they're only halfway through this tie in terms of, well, really, the officiating and organisation of the thing. But final score, it's finished in Azerbaijan tonight. Qarabag 1, Newcastle United 6. Confirmation then of that scoreline and the 3 games coming up a little later on. Bodo Glimt against Inter Milan, Bruges against Atletico, and Bayer Leverkusen's trip to Olympiacos, all kicking off in around 20 minutes time. And we'll confirm the final scores for you of all 8 Champions League knockout playoff first legs when they conclude this evening. A reminder for you that we have the second legs next Tuesday and Wednesday, the games for which will be decided across the weekend when we kind of come to grips of what we want to do, and we'll tell you about that across the weekends. But that is it from us tonight. Thanks for your company. It's been one-way traffic the whole way through the game, up until the second half really, when it got a little bit more competitive, but surely the job was done by then. Newcastle all but into the round of 16. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thanks for your company, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.